Ciao friends, welcome back. Today I want to dive in to a facet of God as our healer. The name is Jehovah Rapha, and we all have hurts that we don't talk about. They sit below the surface that make our hearts ache, right? These tender hearts of ours. We have the things that just pull at those heartstrings. In a world that's bruised and bleeding, God comes really close as Jehovah Rapha, and his presence is healing to us. So I want to invite you to come and get to know this side of God that heals our hurts, the hurts that oftentimes we don't talk about. So today, I want to look at 3 truths of Jehovah Rapha, the Lord who heals. And the first truth is that God heals physically. In Exodus chapter 15, verses 22 to 26, I'm going to read that to you. It's called the Waters of Marah and Elim. Then Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, and they went into the desert of Shur. This was right after that miraculous crossing at the Red Sea. For 3 days, they traveled in the desert without finding water. When they came to Marah, they could not drink the water because it was bitter. That is why the place is called Marah. Verse 24, so the people grumbled against Moses, saying, "What are we to drink?" Then Moses cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a piece of wood. He threw it into the water, and the water became fit to drink. There the Lord issued a ruling and instruction for them and put them to the test. Verse 26, he said, "If you listen carefully to the Lord your God and do what is right in his eyes," obedience, "if you pay attention to his commands and keep all his decrees," again, obedience, "I will not bring you any of the diseases I brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you." Jehovah Rapha. This is the first time in scripture that we see this. It's the very first time that God refers to himself as this. A miracle happened at the waters of Marah. God was saying, I want you to see me as the God who heals. I am going to be your only healer. And in a world where we love to self-medicate, knowing we have a very personal God is really a saving grace for our souls. We use all kinds of things to self-medicate. And I'm not talking about actual medication, right? Although sometimes that too. Just like he changed the bitter waters at Marah, he gets into our hearts and can change the bitterness of our lives. You know, scripture tells us that bitterness can consume us. It can act as a spiritual cancer in our lives that we pass along to our families and our children. We have to take heed of that and really pay attention to these promises and these things that God's telling us. It can show up as chronic illness and injury, long medical journeys. We serve a God who heals and restores. It's not always how we want. We have to be really careful of that, right? Sometimes God doesn't answer a prayer in a way we ask for, or heal in a way we ask for, and we think, God, you're not listening, right? We have these desires of our way to be met, but God does things his way and in his timing. Some of you have been praying for a long time, and I want this to be encouragement that God sees you. Jehovah Rapha heals, and the story is far from over. God promised the Israelites healing if they stayed hemmed in to obedience. Just as he cared for them, that same God cares for you. So Jehovah Rapha, God, heals us physically. The next way he heals us is emotionally. Psalm 143:7 says, he heals the brokenhearted and he binds up their wounds. We all know that some wounds aren't physical, friends. Some of the biggest injuries and the greatest traumas are the things that never see the light of day. They look invisible to the naked eye. We all carry hurt and grief and sadness because we live on this side of heaven. We can't get out of here without it, as hard as we try sometimes, right? I want for a second for us to go back to Easter Sunday morning. I want us to go to John chapter 20 in verse 11. Mary Magdalene, she's standing there. She's standing outside the tomb. Now Mary stood outside the tomb crying, and as she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb. And there she saw the angels, and she sees Jesus, thinking who was the gardener, right? I'm going to fast forward us to verse 16. John 20, verse 16. Jesus said to her, Mary. And she turned toward him and cried out in Aramaic, Rabboni, which means teacher. Mary stood outside that tomb and her heart was wrecked. It was absolutely broken over what she had just gone through. And in a moment, Jesus showed up and healed it. In a moment, he was there. Now, I want you to understand emotions are energy in motion. Emotions are really important compasses that give us really important feedback about life, okay? When we stuff them, when we bury them, when we hide them, we never fully move them. Mary was standing outside that tomb, weeping and crying. She was moving that emotion. And Jesus could show up. Emotions need to be moved up and out so the healing can happen, so God can heal that space. Jesus called Mary by name in that moment. Her mourning turned to joy in an instant. Her despair turned to hope in an instant. Friends, Jehovah Rapha calls us personally, each and every one of us. He calls us to lay the bitterness and the hurt and the grief and the heartbreak and the loneliness and the anxiousness or any other emotion at the foot of the cross. He calls us to move the emotion so he can rush in and fill the hurting spaces. Jehovah Rapha will always rush in to heal. It might not be instant. It might not be as instant as it was for Mary, right? Keep in mind, she just came off of a Silent Saturday when literally everything seemed dark and the world seemed to go heaven seemed to go absolutely silent. But Jesus showed up. I promise you, friends, at first it might just be a whisper. It might be a quiet, faint whisper. But I promise you, Jehovah Rapha will always show up. He will always heal your broken heart and bind up your wounds. Lastly, the way Jehovah Rapha shows up in life is God heals our story. I'm going to turn to Isaiah 53, verse 5. But he was pierced for our transgressions. This is talking about Jesus. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him. And by his wounds, we are healed. Jesus endured a fatal wound so our life could be healed for eternity. Friends, I hope on Easter Sunday you got the magnitude of that message, but just in case you didn't, I want you to hear it again. Jehovah Rapha used the cross, a horrific executioner's tool, to rewrite the entire redemption story. And he did it because he loves you. He heals sin. He lifts shame. He restores broken identities. He doesn't always remove them. Sometimes they stay as that thorn in our side. Trust me, I got a few. Sometimes they leave a brutal scar. Trust me, got a few of those too. But despite all of that, He will transform what you're going through, what you've gone through, into a testimony. Friends, our God never wastes a wound. Even that one. Even the one you're sitting there thinking, this one He wasted. Nope, not even that one. Not even that hurt. What if the place of your greatest hurt becomes the place where other people find healing? Ponder that one. You might be glad you did. So today, whether you stand at bitter waters, whether you're weeping outside a metaphorical tomb, or you carry a story full of pain, friends, I promise you, Jehovah Rapha sees you. He calls your name. Yep, you. He calls your name. He's healing you right in this moment. Friends, let Him into the wound. It's where Jehovah Rapha does His greatest work. I hope this message inspired you. I hope this message uplifted you. If you loved it, share it with a friend. Remember, as I always say, there is always something to be grateful for. Have the best day ever. Cheers.